People on both sides of the assisted suicide and euthanasia debate care very much about suffering. No one wants to experience intolerable pain or suffering, or for someone else to endure it. Assisted suicide or voluntary euthanasia is when a person receives a lethal dose of drug for the purpose of ending their life. But there's a lot of confusion about what's at stake, especially when it comes to the unintended consequences of euthanasia. In this video, I want to highlight some of those negative consequences. Firstly, doctors can get it wrong. Correctly diagnosing a terminal illness and then estimating how long a person has left to live is not an exact science. Even with modern medical knowledge, mistakes are still made. A terminal diagnosis can turn out to be wrong, and even when right, some patients still recover and survive long term. But with assisted death, because the result is final, there's no second chance. No chance to allow for misdiagnosis to come to light, or natural recovery to play out. Secondly, ending another person's life becomes normalized. You see, societal acceptance of euthanasia sends the message that it's okay for a doctor to deliberately end people's lives in some circumstances. What might have been introduced as a tool for a small set of special circumstances quickly becomes the norm. In countries which allow assisted suicide or euthanasia, there tends to be an increase in the number of assisted deaths over time. The Netherlands has reached a point where doctor-induced deaths account for more than a quarter of all deaths in that country. Thirdly, the limitation on who is eligible for assisted dying expands over time. In countries that allow it, we tend to see the relaxation of safeguards and the law being interpreted more loosely over time. Expansion is inevitable because once you allow death for one condition of suffering, why not for others? For example, Canada is removing the requirement for a person's death to be reasonably foreseeable, allowing more disabled people to be eligible. In the Netherlands, euthanasia was initially restricted to the terminally ill, but now it is given to increasing numbers of people with mental illness and to people with advanced dementia, or an accumulation of age-related conditions. The Dutch are debating whether to allow euthanasia for anyone over a certain age who is feeling tired of life. And even though it's not officially part of Dutch euthanasia law, newborn babies can and do receive lethal injections if they have disabilities, even if those disabilities are survivable and treatable. Fourthly, and in my opinion, most seriously, it undermines suicide prevention efforts. Assisted dying sends a dangerous mixed message to those struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. Far too many Kiwis have been deeply impacted by the painful tragedy of a loved one choosing to end their life. Assisted suicide and euthanasia create a dangerous double standard in an age where suicide rates are already far too high. How can we tell a loved one suffering from a treatable mental illness like depression that it's wrong to end their life by taking an overdose, when others can receive an overdose to legally end their life as long as it's from a doctor? This mixed message seriously erodes the valuable work of suicide prevention. So the negative effects we've discussed are: doctors can get it wrong, intentional ending of life becomes normalized and commonplace, limitations will expand over time, and they will, and assisted dying undermines suicide prevention efforts. There are more negative effects which we cover in other videos in this series, which I encourage you to check out. Assisted suicide and euthanasia might make sense at first glance, especially for those dire cases. But like an iceberg, there are dangerous and hidden consequences below the surface. A compassionate response to suffering is absolutely necessary, but only if that compassion is also extended to everyone who could ultimately be hurt if assisted death is normalized. If you enjoy our videos, please support us so we can make more like these. Visit support.thinkingmatters.org.nz, and while there, check out other resources and events.